The apartment was too small for two people, but Jules Morgan had learned to navigate its cramped corners like a dancer moving through familiar choreography. She sat cross-legged on the worn couch, laptop balanced on her knees, staring at the overdue rent notice that had been tacked to their door that morning. The numbers blurred together. 2 months behind. Another week until eviction proceedings began. Her phone buzzed against the cushion. "You need to take this job." Nina stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, still wearing her bartender uniform from the lunch shift. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started to come loose hours ago. Victoria's desperate. One of her servers got food poisoning. Jules didn't look up from the screen. "I'm a graphic designer, not a caterer." "You're also broke." Nina crossed the small space in 3 steps, plucking the laptop away. "It's one night, 5 hours, $300 cash." That made Jules look up. 300 would cover groceries for 2 weeks, maybe more if she was careful. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the couch cushion. What kind of event? Some charity gala at the Sterling Metropolitan. Rich people throwing money at other rich people while pretending to care about causes they can't pronounce. Nina's expression softened. "I know you hate this stuff, but we need the money. I need you to do this." The Sterling Metropolitan Hotel rose above Fifth Avenue like a monument to excess. Jules stood on the sidewalk at 6:45, watching guests arrive in vehicles that cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. Women draped in jewels that caught the evening light, men in tuxedos that fit like second skins. Valets moved with practiced, sensed efficiency, doors opening and closing in a rhythm that felt almost choreographed. Her sneakers felt wrong against the marble steps. Victoria Pensworth appeared the moment Jules entered through the service entrance, clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield. She was older than Jules had expected, maybe early 40s, with blonde hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Her eyes scanned Jules from head to toe in 2 seconds flat. "You're the replacement." Not a question. Victoria's heels clicked against the floor as she walked, forcing Jules to follow at a near jog. Standard service protocols. Smile but don't speak unless spoken to. Champagne trays circulate constantly. Never let a glass sit empty. If someone important asks for something, you find me immediately. Do you understand? Jules nodded, though Victoria had already turned a corner. The kitchen was chaos wrapped in stainless steel. Chefs barked orders in 3 languages. Servers moved like schools of fish, synchronized and purposeful. Someone thrust a uniform into Jules's hands. Black dress, white apron, shoes that were half a size too small. She changed in a bathroom that smelled of industrial cleaner and expensive perfume, studying her reflection in the mirror. The dress fit awkwardly across her shoulders. She looked exactly like what she was, someone pretending to belong. The ballroom took her breath away despite her determination not to be impressed. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with scenes of clouds and angels. Tables draped in ivory silk surrounded a dance floor that gleamed like still water. Flowers she couldn't name spilled from centerpieces taller than her head. The air smelled of roses and money. Jules accepted a tray, best of champagne flutes from a harried supervisor, and stepped into the crowd. The guests moved through the space like they owned it. Maybe some of them did. She caught fragments of conversation as she circulated, vacation homes in the Hamptons, art acquisitions, mergers she didn't understand. A woman in a red dress that probably cost what Jules paid in annual rent waved her over, took a glass without making eye contact, and continued her conversation about a disappointing yacht renovation. Jules felt invisible. It was almost liberating. She'd been circulating for nearly an hour when she noticed him standing alone near the terrace doors. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a well-tailored black suit that managed to look elegant without the formality of the tuxedos surrounding him. Dark hair slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. He held an iPad, scrolling through what looked like checklists, his expression focused in a way that suggested he was working rather than socializing. Staff, Jules decided, probably senior management for the hotel or event coordination. She'd seen him emerge from a service corridor near the kitchen 10 minutes earlier, speaking quietly into his phone. She approached with her tray, intending to offer champagne out of courtesy. He looked up as she drew close, gray eyes that caught her off guard with their directness. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." His voice was lower than she expected, touched with something that might have been amusement. Jules blinked. "Excuse me?" The expression. He gestured vaguely toward her face with the iPad. "I've been watching the staff all evening. Most have perfected the pleasant mask. Yours keeps slipping." She should have smiled politely and moved away. Instead, she heard herself say, "Maybe I'm just bad at pretending $300 champagne tastes better than the $10 bottle." His mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but close. "Does it?" "Wouldn't know. We're not allowed to drink it." Probably wise. He turned slightly, scanning the ballroom with an expression that mirrored what Jules had been feeling all night. This whole thing is excessive, don't you think? The flowers alone could fund a small nonprofit for 6 months. Jules felt something shift in her chest. Surprise, maybe? She'd expected defensiveness, not agreement. "You work here?" Something like that. He slipped the iPad under his arm. "First time working one of these events?" "That obvious?" "The shoes." He nodded toward her feet. "They're killing you. You keep shifting your weight every 30 seconds. Jules looked down at the 2 small heels, then back up at him. He was watching her with an expression of genuine interest that felt foreign in this space of careful politeness and performance. "They're half a size too small. Beggars can't be choosers. I'm Owen, by the way." "Jules?" She hesitated, then added, "Short for Juliet, but no one calls me that except my mother when she's disappointed." "Which is how often?" "Recently? Daily." The words came out before she could stop them. Jules felt her cheeks warm. She didn't know this man, didn't know why she was standing here talking instead of circulating. "Sorry, that was honest," Owen finished. "Refreshing, actually. Most people here would rather choke than admit to having problems." He glanced toward a cluster of guests near the bar, where a man with silver hair was holding court, gesturing broadly. Owen with his drink. "See him? James Wellington. Inherited $300 million and acts like he earned it through hardship. Spends most events like this reminding everyone about his yacht club membership." Jules followed his gaze. Wellington was exactly the type she'd been serving all night, commanding attention as his birthright, smiling in a way that never reached his eyes. "You don't like him." "I think he represents everything wrong with this world." Owen's voice had gone flat. "People who mistake wealth for worth." "But you work for people like him. Sometimes you have to operate within a system to change it." He turned back to her, and Jules noticed the small scar above his left eyebrow, a thin white line that suggested an old injury. "What about you? What do you do when you're not serving champagne?" "Graphic design, freelance." Jules shifted the tray to her other hand. The flutes were getting heavy. "Mostly logo work for small businesses, some web design, nothing glamorous." "Do you enjoy it?" The question caught her off guard. Most people asked if it paid well or if she'd worked with anyone famous. "When I can afford to be picky about clients, yes. When I'm taking whatever pays the bills," she shrugged. "It's work. That's honest too." A burst of laughter erupted from a nearby table. Owen glanced toward it, then back to Jules, something shifting in his expression. "Can I ask you something? Off the record, so to speak." Jules nodded slowly. "If you could tell everyone in this room one truth they need to hear, what would it be?" She should have deflected, should have smiled and said something harmless. Instead, Jules looked around the ballroom, at the excessive flowers, the designer gowns, the champagne. Knee flowing like water while people outside struggled to pay rent, and felt 2 months of frustration rise in her throat. That their charity means nothing if they go home to mansions and forget about the causes by morning. That writing a check isn't the same as caring. That most of them are here to be seen, not to help. She met his eyes. And that people like me, serving them drinks, are working 3 jobs just to survive in the city they've made unaffordable. Silence stretched between them. Jules waited for offense, for dismissal. Instead, Owen's expression softened into something that looked almost like sadness. "You're absolutely right." Before Jules could respond, Victoria appeared at her elbow like a materializing ghost. Her face was flushed, eyes wide with barely controlled panic. "There you are. I need you in the East Wing, now. We're short 2 servers and the appetizer course is delayed." Victoria's gaze flicked to Owen, then away, her attention already splintering toward the next crisis. "Move, quickly." Jules looked back at Owen apologetically. "I should go. I'll cover for you if anyone asks where you disappeared to." That almost smile again. "Good luck with the shoes." She was halfway across the ballroom, weaving between tables, when she heard someone call out, "Mr. Lancaster, we need your approval on the seating arrangements." The name didn't register immediately. Jules was focused on not spilling champagne, on reaching the East Wing before Victoria had an aneurysm. But something made her glance back. Owen was speaking to an older man in an expensive suit, the iPad back in his hands. The man's posture was deferential in a way that suggested hierarchy. Owen said something Jules couldn't hear, and the man nodded quickly before hurrying away. Lancaster. The name tugged at something in her memory. Victoria had mentioned the host earlier, during the rushed orientation. Something about the benefactor who'd organized the entire event. Mr. Lancaster, who'd made his fortune in technology and renewable energy. Who was Jules. Victoria's voice cut through her thoughts like a knife. "Stop standing there like a statue. We have 200 guests and not enough hands." Jules moved, but the unease followed her through the rest of the evening like a shadow she couldn't shake. The unease crystallized into certainty at 9:15 when the lights dimmed. Jules was near the kitchen entrance, her tray finally empty, when a voice cut through the ambient conversation. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention, please." A woman in a midnight blue gown stood at the podium on the small stage, her smile practiced and perfect. "It's my privilege to introduce the man who made this evening possible, a visionary in technology and sustainable energy, a philanthropist who believes in action over words. Please welcome your host, Owen Lancaster." The applause started before Jules fully processed the words. She watched, tray tilting in her hands, as Owen walked onto the stage. The same slightly disheveled hair, the same gray eyes, the same man she'd spent 20 minutes complaining to about the wealthy elite. The man who was, apparently, a billionaire. 3 champagne flutes slid off the tray. The crystals shattered against marble, with a sound that seemed impossibly loud. Heads turned. Jules felt her face go hot, her chest tight. She crouched down immediately, gathering shards with shaking hands. "Don't move." A server she didn't know appeared with a dustpan. "You'll cut yourself. Let me handle it." But Jules couldn't stay still. She grabbed larger pieces, dimly aware that her fingers were trembling, that people were still looking, that somewhere on that stage, Owen Lancaster was giving a speech she couldn't bear to hear. Authentic connections in a world that often values appearance over substance. His voice carried across the ballroom, low and measured. Tonight isn't about writing checks and forgetting. It's about remembering that behind every cause are real people with real struggles. Jules closed her eyes. Her throat felt thick. "Let me be clear," Owen continued, and something in his tone made her look up despite herself. "Charity without action is performance. Wealth without responsibility is privilege. And if we leave here tonight without committing to genuine change, we've failed the communities we claim to support." His eyes swept the crowd. For just a moment, they found hers across the distance. Jules looked away first. The service corridor behind the kitchen was dim and blessedly empty. Jules leaned against the wall, still holding 2 pieces of broken crystal she'd forgotten to dispose of. Her mind raced through every word she'd said, every complaint, every criticism of the wealthy guests who were probably his friends, his colleagues, his world. He'd let her talk, had encouraged it, had agreed with her while knowing exactly who he was and what he represented. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Jules straightened, expecting Victoria or another server. Instead, James Wellington rounded the corner, his silver hair catching the fluorescent light. He wasn't alone. A younger man in an expensive tuxedo walked beside him. Owen's little speech was touching, Wellington said, his tone dripping with condescension. All that talk of authenticity while he plays dress-up with the help. Jules pressed herself against the wall, hoping the shadows would hide her. You saw him talking to that server earlier? The younger man sounded amused, thought he had better taste. He's always had a weakness for projects, probably thought she'd be impressed by his humble billionaire act. Wellington laughed, the sound harsh, as if anyone believes he remembers what it's like to be ordinary. They passed without noticing her. Jules waited until their footsteps faded before she moved. Her hands clenched so tight the crystal bit into her palm. A thin line of blood appeared. She barely felt it. She needed to leave, now, before she saw Owen again, before she had to face the humiliation of having been someone's entertainment for the evening. The exit was close, 30 feet down the corridor, through the service entrance, out into the night where she could breathe again. Jules started walking, her 2 small shoes clicking against tile. Jules. She stopped, didn't turn around. Owen's footsteps approached slowly, cautiously, like he was afraid she'd bolt. Please, let me explain. Explain what? Jules turned to face him and was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. That you thought it would be funny to let the poor server vent about rich people while you played along? That you were slumming it for the evening? That's not what happened. Then what was it? She took a step toward him. You knew who I was, what I was, and you let me stand there making a fool of myself? Owen's jaw tightened. You weren't making a fool of yourself. You were being honest. Do you know how rare that is for me? How exhausting it is to have every conversation calculated, every interaction filtered through who people think I am. So I was what? A refreshing break? Entertainment between speeches? Jules felt something sharp lodge in her chest. God, Wellington was right. I was just another project. You heard that? His expression shifted into something that looked like anger. James Wellington is a bitter, old-money aristocrat who can't stand that I built something he had to inherit. Don't let him. This isn't about him. Jules cut him off. This is about you lying to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't correct your assumption. That's the same thing. Is it? Owen stepped closer, his voice dropping. You assumed I was staff because I was working, because I wasn't performing wealth like everyone else in that ballroom. Would you have talked to me the same way if you'd known? Would you have been honest about what you were feeling? Jules wanted to say yes. The words stuck in her throat. I liked talking to you, Owen continued quietly. I liked that you saw me as just another person navigating an absurd evening. For 20 minutes, I wasn't Owen Lancaster, billionaire philanthropist. I was just Owen, and that's so rare for me that I didn't want it to end. By letting me humiliate myself? You didn't humiliate yourself. You were right about all of it. The excess, the performance, the charity that means nothing without action. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture familiar now. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I remember what it's like to serve people who don't see you as human. And I hate that I've become someone who makes others feel that way. Jules searched his face for deception, found only exhaustion and something that might have been genuine regret. You still should have told me. You're right, I should have. Owen pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, held it out. I'm telling you now, this is who I am, and I'd like to know who you are, really know you. Not the server persona, not the defensive walls, just Jules. She looked at the card, but didn't take it. Why? Because in 20 minutes, you were more real with me than most people are in years. His hand remained steady, the card held between them like an offering. And because I think you see through the parts of this world that I hate too. Victoria's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the hotel. Where is that girl? We're missing a server." Owen's expression shifted, something protective crossing his features. "Go. I'll tell Victoria I sent you home. You won't lose your pay." "I don't need you to." "I know you don't need me to do anything." He placed the card on the utility shelf beside them. "But you earned that money, and Victoria's already stressed enough without thinking she shortchanged someone." Jules stared at him for a long moment. Then she grabbed her coat from the staff room and left through the service entrance without looking back. The apartment was dark when she returned. Nina was working a late shift at the bar. Jules stood in the bathroom, washing broken crystal dust from her hands, watching pink-tinged water swirl down the drain. Her phone buzzed, a news alert from some society blog she'd never heard of. The headline showed a photo from the Gala, Owen standing near the terrace doors, Jules. "Lancaster spotted an intimate conversation with mysterious woman." The caption read, "Lancaster spotted an intimate conversation with mysterious woman. New romance for NYC's most eligible bachelor?" Jules set the phone face down on the counter. Sunlight woke her at 8. Nina was already up, still in last night's clothes, sitting at their tiny kitchen table with her laptop open. "You're famous." Nina turned the screen around. The same photo, now picked up by 3 other blogs. Someone had zoomed in, circled Jules' face. The comments speculated wildly. "Your phone's been buzzing all morning." Jules picked it up with dread. 17 missed calls. Dozens of texts from numbers she didn't recognize. 2 from Victoria, asking if she was okay. 1 from her mother, who'd somehow already seen the photo. And a notification that someone had sent her money through a payment app. She opened it slowly. $500 from an account listed simply as OL. The memo line read, "Payment for services rendered plus standard gratuity. You earned this." Beneath it, a second notification, a photo message from the same account. A handwritten note on hotel stationery, photographed and sent. "Jules, I owe you an apology. Not for enjoying our conversation, which was the most genuine interaction I've had in months, but for not being honest about who I am. You were right to be angry. You were right about most things you said last night. I meant what I said about wanting to know you, the real you. If you're willing to give me a chance to do this properly, as equals this time, my personal number is on the back of that card I left. No pressure, no expectations, just coffee and honesty. Owen." Nina leaned over her shoulder, reading. "Well?" Jules stared at the message, at the money that would cover rent and groceries, at the careful handwriting and the phone number written below the signature. "I don't know," she said quietly, but she saved the number anyway. Jules spent 3 days staring at Owen's number before Nina finally took her phone. "You're texting him or I'm texting him for you?" Nina held the device out of reach, her expression somewhere between exasperated and amused. "The man sent you a handwritten apology, and you're acting like it's a ransom note. It's complicated. It's coffee, the least complicated thing in the world." Nina typed something quickly, then tossed the phone back. "There, done." Jules looked at the screen. A simple message to Owen's number. "Coffee, sounds good. When and where?" The response came in less than a minute. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., there's a place called Birch Street Cafe in Brooklyn. Small, quiet, decent coffee, no photographers." Jules read it twice. Brooklyn, not Manhattan. A cafe, not some expensive restaurant. She typed back before she could overthink it. "I'll be there." Birch Street Cafe occupied a corner storefront in Park Slope, the kind of neighborhood place with mismatched chairs and local art on the walls. Jules arrived 10 minutes early, her heart beating too fast. She'd changed outfits 3 times before settling on jeans and a green sweater that Nina said brought out her eyes. Through the window, she could see Owen already inside, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He wore a gray Henley and dark jeans, his hair still slightly disheveled. He looked nervous, she realized. His fingers drummed against the table in an uneven rhythm. The bell above the door chimed when she entered. "Owen?" Owen stood immediately, then seemed to catch himself and sat back down, a self-conscious smile crossing his face. "I ordered you a latte," he said as she approached, "but I realized I don't actually know if you drink coffee, so that was presumptuous, and now I'm rambling." He stopped, took a breath. "Hi." "Hi." Jules sat down, wrapping her hands around the cup. It was warm and smelled like cinnamon. "Latte's good, thank you." Silence stretched between them, different from the easy conversation at the gala. Owen looked at her like he was trying to solve an equation. Jules stared at her coffee. "This is awkward," they both said at the same time. The simultaneous admission broke something. Owen laughed, a real sound that softened the sharp lines of his face. Jules felt her shoulders relax slightly. "Can we start over?" Owen leaned forward, his gray eyes serious. "I am Owen Lancaster. I'm 34. I built a company that makes AI systems for renewable energy management. I grew up in Queens with a single mother who taught me that money doesn't make you better than anyone else. And I really, truly enjoyed talking to you at that gala, even though I handled it terribly." Jules took a sip of her latte, considering. "I'm Jules Morgan. I'm 28. I'm a freelance graphic designer who's barely keeping her head above water financially. I have trust issues with wealthy people because I've watched them treat service workers like furniture my entire life. And I don't know if I can get past the fact that you let me rant to you without telling me the truth." "That's fair." Owen's fingers stopped drumming. "What can I do to earn your trust?" "I don't know if you can." "Can I try?" Something in his voice made Jules look up. He was watching her with an intensity that felt almost vulnerable, like her answer mattered more than it should to someone of his position. "Why does this matter to you?" she asked. "You could have anyone. Why chase down a struggling designer who served you champagne?" Owen was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "My mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. Near the end, she told me she was worried I'd become the kind of person we used to serve, that I'd forget where I came from." He turned the coffee cup in his hands. "I've been so careful not to let the money change me that I've become isolated. Everyone wants something. Access, investment, connections. You were the first person in years to just talk to me like a human being, even if it was because you thought I was hotel staff." Jules felt something shift in her chest. "I'm sorry about your mother." "She would have liked you. She had the same fire." Owen smiled sadly. "She once told off a customer who snapped his fingers at her, got fired for it, never regretted it." "She sounds like she was someone worth knowing." "She was." They talked for 2 hours. The coffee went cold. Owen told her about building his company from a one-room apartment, about the first investor who believed in him, about the loneliness of success. Jules talked about her design work, about the clients who expected miracles for pennies, about the art school dreams she'd abandoned for practical survival. It felt real, carefully real, like they were both testing the ground beneath their feet. When Jules finally checked her phone, it was past noon. "I should go. I have a client meeting at 2. Owen stood when she did. "Can I see you again?" Jules hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." Walking home, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The feeling lasted 4 days. Jules was at her laptop, working on a logo design for a local bakery, when Nina burst through the door holding her phone like a weapon. "Have you seen this?" Nina's face was pale. "It's all over the business news sites." The article loaded slowly. Jules read the headline twice, certain she'd misunderstood. "Lancaster Innovations accused of corporate espionage. Mystery woman linked to leaked documents." Her hands went numb. The story was thin on facts but heavy on insinuation. An anonymous source claimed Owen had used a romantic connection to gain access to a competitor's systems. The competitor was Wellington Technologies. The mystery woman was described as a freelance contractor with tech skills who'd been photographed with Lancaster at a recent charity event. Jules's phone rang, an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, different number. "They think it's you." Nina sat down heavily on the couch. "The comments are already connecting dots. Someone found your LinkedIn profile." By evening, Jules had lost 3 clients. Polite emails citing changing needs and budget constraints. Her inbox filled with messages from strangers. Some curious, some accusing, some obscene. She tried calling Owen. The number went straight to voicemail. She tried texting. No response. At 9 p.m., Nina showed her another article. Owen had released a corporate statement categorically denying all allegations. The statement was professional, detailed, and never once mentioned Jules by name. "He's protecting your privacy," Nina said quietly. But Jules's phone kept ringing with numbers she didn't recognize. Her few remaining clients had stopped responding to emails. The protection felt thin as paper. 2 weeks passed in a blur of silence. Owen didn't call. Jules didn't reach out. She watched from a distance as the corporate drama unfolded in business journals and tech blogs. Wellington's accusations fell apart under scrutiny. The leaked documents turned out to be fabricated. A formal retraction was issued. Owen's reputation emerged intact. Jules remained tarnished by association. She was updating her portfolio, trying to salvage her client base, when Nina came home with news. "Remember that wellness startup I mentioned, the one looking for a designer?" Nina set a business card on the table. "They called me, said Owen Lancaster personally recommended you, gave them your portfolio link, and told them you were the best emerging designer in New York." Jules picked up the card. When did he do this? 2 weeks ago, right after everything exploded. Nina pulled up her laptop, showing Jules an email thread. "He didn't just recommend you to them, he recommended you to 6 companies. None of them connected to him publicly, all of them legitimate. 3 have already contacted you through your website." Jules checked her inbox. Nina was right. 3 new client inquiries, all professional, all offering fair rates. Real work based on her portfolio, not charity. "He's been helping without making a show of it," Nina said softly. "That's got to mean something." The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Heavy cardstock in a plain envelope delivered by courier. A charity event for renewable energy education programs, hosted at a gallery in Chelsea. Jules Morgan was invited as a guest designer, her work to be featured in the event materials. At the bottom, in handwriting, she recognized, "No pressure, but I'd really like to see you. Owen." Nina appeared over her shoulder. "You're going." "I don't know." "You're going, and I'm coming with you to make sure you don't chicken out." The gallery was smaller than the Sterling Metropolitan, intimate and warmly lit. Jules arrived in a simple black dress she'd owned for 3 years, her design work displayed on sleek panels near the entrance. Her hands shook slightly as she signed in. Owen stood near the back of the room, talking to a small group. He wore dark slacks and a white button-down, looking more relaxed than he had at the gala. Then his eyes found hers across the space. The conversation around him faded. He excused himself, moving through the crowd with purpose. Jules met him halfway, aware of Nina giving her an encouraging thumbs up from the wine table. "You came." Owen stopped a careful distance away, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed closer. "I wasn't sure you would." "Your corporate statement was very professional," Jules said. "Thorough, distant. I was trying to protect you, keep your name out of it." His jaw tightened. "Wellington manufactured that entire situation to damage my company. He used the photo from the gala, used you as ammunition. I didn't want to make it worse by dragging you into the public response. So you just went silent? I thought that's what you'd want, space, distance from the mess." Owen's voice dropped. "Was I wrong?" Jules looked at him, really looked. She saw exhaustion around his eyes, tension in his shoulders. This hadn't been easy for him either. "You recommended me to 6 companies. You're talented. They needed designers. It wasn't charity. It was." "Help? Is that allowed?" Something vulnerable crossed his face. "Can I help without it being an insult to your independence?" Jules thought about the past 2 weeks. The silence, the assumption that he'd abandoned her to save himself, the reality of quiet support that respected her pride. "I think I've been so defensive about not needing rescue that I couldn't see the difference between charity and partnership. And now I think I owe you an apology too." Jules stepped closer. "I assumed the worst, that you'd protect yourself and forget about me. I didn't trust that you meant what you said about wanting to know me." Owen's hand moved like he wanted to reach for her, then stopped halfway. Can we try again? Actually, this time, with honesty and trust and very clear communication about what we both need? I need you to understand that this balance is hard for me, that your money and influence will always be something I'm navigating. I need you to understand that I don't want to fix you or save you. I just want to be with you. Owen's voice steadied. As equals, as partners, even when it's complicated. Jules closed the remaining distance between them. That sounds terrifying. Completely terrifying. His hand finally found hers, tentative and warm. Worth it, though? She kissed him instead of answering. Behind them, Nina's cheer echoed through the gallery, making several guests turn and smile. Owen laughed against her mouth, his other hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. For the record, Jules murmured when they pulled apart, you're still terrible at being subtle, and you're still terrible at accepting help gracefully. We're going to be a disaster, aren't we? Wouldn't we? Probably. Owen's smile was bright and real, but an honest one. 3 months later, Jules stood in her new workspace at the Brooklyn Design Collective, a shared studio she'd rented with money from legitimate clients and her own hard work. The launch party was small. Nina, a handful of fellow designers, a few friends from her neighborhood, and Owen, who'd arrived early to help her hang artwork and was now arranging refreshments with the focused intensity he brought to everything. "You're doing it wrong," Jules called from across the room. "Wine goes on the left." "Since when?" "Since always. It's basic party planning." Owen moved the bottles with exaggerated care, then turned to her with a grin. "Better? Adequate?" She crossed to him, adjusting his collar, which had flipped up. "Thank you for helping, and for not trying to pay for any of this. You made that very clear in approximately 17 different conversations." His hands settled on her waist. "I'm a slow learner, but I get there eventually. You're here as my boyfriend who's terrible at party planning, not as Owen Lancaster, billionaire benefactor. I can live with that." He kissed her forehead. "Though for the record, I'm excellent at party planning. I organized that entire gala. That gala was excessive and ridiculous. You're not wrong." Nina's voice carried from the doorway. "Are you two going to keep being adorable, or can we start this party?" Jules looked around her new workspace, at the designs on the walls that she'd created, at the future she was building on her own terms. Owen squeezed her hand once, then stepped back to let her take center stage. Equal partners, honest and complicated and real. It was terrifying. It was worth it.